Hi guys, welcome to iRacing. This is going to be a race at Summit Point. There's about 16 of us on this race, 15, 16, and I'm starting 6th on the grid. It's a middle split race, and as the race goes on I'll go into a little bit about that, just in case anyone's not familiar with the split system. And I'm showing you this race because, well, for the simple reason it was a pretty damn good race. And it wasn't because of where I finished, although I'm not complaining about where I finished, but it was just it was good advert for this car. This spec race, a Ford race, at Summit Point. Summit Point I don't like. I've just never felt comfortable at Summit Point. It's one track I always used to really struggle in this car. I don't know why. I think part of it is that some of the corners are a little bit between gears. So you've got to sort of either maintain momentum or go in a lower gear and things like that. They're just a bit tricky, and I just struggle a little bit in corner momentum. So I just never found this track particularly easy to drive. I saw a little bit of a bump with car 10. He just closed the door on me a little bit and didn't realise and lost. And then he collects his what looks like his teammate. They're almost identical looking cars. So I'm 4th in what's going to be quite a tense race. There's some good moves. There's a very good battle in the middle race and a very close finish. And it's the one thing you want in a race is, this is an 18-lap race of 1 minute 25 per lap, so it comes out at about 25 minutes. And there's battling all the way down the field. That's what you want. Some drivers have bad races. You've just seen 2 go into the pit crunch. Then you've got a car that's pitting now. I think he must have had damage early on, so we're pitting for a new car. Yeah, it's Spec Racer Ford, which you've seen before in my Donington replay. I used to race this car all the time. Nice little pass there on the inside, and at the same time the race leaders run wide. So that's the first lead change. 2 laps in and I'm up to 3rd, and I make progress through this race mainly through people's mistakes, but after about lap 5 or 6 the race will settle down in terms of where I am in the race, but the race itself won't settle down, and that's why I've decided to play this replay. So good at an attempt at coming back by the number 8, and then the leader spins. Yeah, it was that kind of start to this race. But although they're spinning, they're not crashing out, so they're not out of the race. They're losing maybe 6-7 seconds, but they're keeping going. The field's still fairly tight, although number 1's just decided to park himself in the tyres. A little job for the little orange men, the marshals. So number 8's putting me under pressure. I've got car 14 about 2 seconds ahead at this point. And watch this. This was a really, really impressive move. So I'm protecting the inside. Kept it tight. He's sat all the way around the outside of this corner and made it stick. That is racing. That is, that is a really good pass. I didn't make it easy for him, and he took his chance and he made it stick. Fair play to him. That's, a lot of iRacers struggle to understand how to overtake. This guy, he's got racing brains. He's a good racer. As far as I know, I've never raced him before, but that was a really good pass. And I'll try and rattle him over the next few laps, I really do try and force him into a dummy pass. I'll pull lots of dummy passes on him, and he doesn't fall for it. Doesn't fall for it at all. I was going on about the split system. There's a thing in iRacing called iRating. For those of my channel who aren't iRacers, which works a bit like the chess ELO rating system. It's modified slightly because obviously you're working with a field of, in this case, about 15, 16 cars rather than 2 players. So it's not a straight win or loss. You only ever get 1 winner in a race, and 14, 15, whatever, how many cars there are technically losers. But roughly, and it does depend on your I rating, compared to everyone else, you gain I rating in the top half of the field, lose I rating in the bottom half of the field. But say if cars 1, 2 and 3 all spun, crashed out, finished the bottom 3 in the field, you're instantly going to get them. They're going to lose a lot of points, and cars well below or noticeably 2 or 3 cars below the top, below halfway, will gain points, especially if those are people on quite low I ratings, because they're, even in a fairly normal race, if you're the last car in the field and you finish just below the top half, you'll often gain a small amount of I rating anyway. And the I rating is their gauge of how good a racer you are. Ostensibly, I mean, they've got to use an automatic system. They've got no option, and it's as good an automatic system as any other. But it does assume that your I rating is reflective of speed, and it's not. In this race, I'm not the fastest car. My I rating's lower than it should be. It's about 1455, I think now. But it should be higher because I know how to race, not because I'm quick. So when I'm faced with top split races, I really struggle, because the top split races will have a lot of fast guys and a lot of consistent guys, and I'm the slower of the consistent guys, or girls in my case, of course. So I like races at this level. This is my level of racing. This is where I can generally finish his races fairly well, get a nice confidence boost out of them, but I've had a really good race all the way through. And that's exactly what we get in here. This is Summit Point. As I said, this is a free track with the iRacing service, as is the car. You pay an annual 6 monthly, 3 monthly or 1 monthly subscription, so it's not entirely free, but the game itself is free. And this was said about the dummy moves, so I was just trying to put one on him there and just sat it outrate me and kept the place. So I'm sitting in third. There's quite a bit of a gap at this stage to the cars behind, and I'm just plugging away at this point. I'm not thinking about the end of the race. I'm just trying to keep everything smooth, keep it under control, not do anything silly, unlike the number 14. I think that corner is quite a tricky corner, and I think he just braked a bit too hard coming out the corner, locked his rears and spun. He may even have his brake bias a little bit too far back. I'm always a bit cagey going through that corner, because you're coming on the brakes inevitably with your weight on the outside tyres. So you're asking them to brake in a longitudinal direction whilst there's still some lateral load. So braking out of that corner is always a little bit of not so much a lottery, but you've got to bear in mind that it's not a straightforward braking zone. And I think he just braked a bit too hard, too early, and locked the rears. You don't generally spin in that corner from going too quick. It's flat in 5th or 4th. Some people will take a bit of a lift, sometimes I do, depending on whether I get the line right, but it's definitely takeable in 5th. But if you take it flat in 5th, you're instantly pushing yourself in the braking zone because you're coming into the braking zone a bit higher, faster. So it tends to be a bit safer to actually take this corner. This again, it's here with a tiny lift, but it also keeps you better. You'll notice I tend to brake for the following sort of semi-hairpin in a less than optimal position. And if you're trying to, and it may have been also that the 14 was trying to keep it nice and tight for the right-hander, so he's keeping it tight, which is putting more lateral load in and braking. I tend to take a little lift, especially if I'm not pushed. So 8's pulling away a little bit at this stage and then spins. That corner is also tricky, and this is what this track is in that one. It's not my favourite, and I think one of the reasons not favourite, it's actually quite a tricky track. You've got the junkyard corner where the 2 cars spun, and then the leader just binned it, and then you've got that corner which is flat if you get the line right, and I suspect he got the line more or less right, kept his boot in, and that's why he spun. One of the things that I do, and I believe it's the way that you've got to drive, is you drive as fast as you can, but if you realise you made the mistake, and compensate for it. In that case, if he'd feathered the throttle rather than keeping it buried, he'd have probably got away with it and not spun. But what we have got is a battle behind. 14's just half spun. 4, I think that is a spun completely. So they're both, again, I think 14's running with slightly rear biased brakes. But as you can see, even though we've had cars with incidents and small half spins and things like that, we've got battles, and my win isn't by any means guaranteed at this stage. We are 12 minutes into the race, which is, still, it's about half distance, and there's battles all the way down the field. I'm just scrolling through the cars at the moment, just picking up the different, so you can see the different cars. So, this train here, 4, 14, I'm not sure, run 3. I'm not sure what number is it. 2 and 3. Looks fairly spread out. Doesn't end up that way. It's that kind of race that just keeps things tight and interesting all the way through. Further back, we've got this battle here between 7 and 13. 13's carrying a bit of side pod damage, but generally that doesn't really affect the car too much, especially on a track like this where the speeds aren't overly high. It's more about momentum in corners and rather than outright top speed. Same with this one, car 9. His ultimate top speed will be limited, but due to the nose damage. So I'm just gone for a gentle little drift, and the 14's had another spin. So it was definitely action-packed, this race. We'll go back to the beginning again. And the number 3 is made a move up the inside. Very good pass into another. That corner is actually quite fun. It's sort of 4th gear, nearly flat, and you're always trying to get the speed out of it to come down this straight. And the number 2's coming back at him. Just lost my train of thought. Can't remember what I was saying. Second time I've done this as well, so I messed up the first recording, which doesn't exactly help. But anyway, so we've got 3 and 2 battling there. iRacing. Where's it going? Tyres, that's the big subject at the moment, whilst the race is a little bit quiet. Just come in there. it's tyres are the big subject at the moment. I like the way the tyres are going. They're causing people, certain people, problems. But the way they're going is definitely realistic, and the reason I say that is that I know that iRacing did a lot of testing of tyres before they, when they were starting the new tyre model, and as part of that they destroyed tyres. They put them on a testing rig, which I think basically tested the grip level the tyre was giving under certain amounts of abuse, and then abused the hell out of the tyres until they gave up. And basically the grip level of a tyre, as a tyre warms up, its grip level increases until it reaches a certain point, at which point it starts to drop, and drops very quickly. The build-up and grip is reasonably gradual. The drop-off is fairly quick. And the issue is at the moment is that the drop-off of the tyres in iRacing is probably a bit too dramatic, a bit too quick. Especially if you spin the car. If you spin the car, you can often struggle for a couple of corners just to keep the car on the track. So there's definitely issues with it, but the basic principle of the way that the tyres are working, I think, is absolutely spot on. Basically, if your driving style optimises getting as much grip out of the tyres as possible, and is fairly aggressive in the way that it does it, then you're going to be putting a lot of heat into the tyres. Put heat into the tyres, you're going to wear them because they're going to be softer, because of course friction generates heat, which softens rubber. You know from yourself. I'm guessing most people know that cold rubber is fairly hard, hot rubber is fairly soft, which is of course going to make them wear a bit more because it's softer. Anything softer wears more. But also you're probably abrading them a bit more. Think about a pencil eraser. If you braid it quite hard, it wears quite quickly. If you braid it quite softly, it doesn't abrade, it doesn't wear down so quickly. And that's what's happening in iRacing. It's probably a little bit, it definitely needs tweaking. There's bugs in the tyre model as well anyway, to do with cold tyres. But the idea is right. If people are going to be pushing tyres, it used to be that you could push the hell out of tyres. You could just rag them on the ragged edge, right on the limit, for 25 laps, or 25 minutes, half an hour, and the tyres would say, yeah, and more. But that's not the way that racing works. You've got to manage tyres. Today's Formula 1 race, Rosberg made his tyres last the entire one set of tyres lasted all but one lap of the race. But that's the exception, and even though we know that Formula 1 tyres are almost designed to wear, Rosberg would have still had to manage his tyres for the entire race. He wasn't pushing them onto the, he wasn't going around sliding them. He wasn't, he was managing wheel spin and that kind of thing. Had he not done that, he wouldn't have made it to the end. And I do motorsport marshalling, and you'll hear drivers and they'll complain that their tyres were giving up because they've been pushing really hard, say in a really close race, and they just overheated their tyres. So I think the way that iRacing's going is absolutely spot on. No tweaking, but it makes things more interesting because you've got to look at the way that a car behaves with its tyres and understand the way to manage them. And you always have to manage tyres in a racing car. It's not, in a 25-minute race, you've still got to manage them and look after them. Back to the race, we've got 14 is now putting pressure on 4. Going for a pass around the outside again. He likes that, doesn't he? I know it wasn't 14 earlier, was it number 8 earlier? Couldn't make it stick. We're talking 20 minutes now, so we've got, I think, about 3 laps left of this race. And I've hoped you've enjoyed, while I've been rabbiting on about tyres, enjoyed this race. Because it really was an enjoyable race to race. I've spent most of the time since taking the lead just trying to manage lap times. I know I'm not the quickest out there, but I've just been trying to keep the car stable, keep my lap times consistent, and just trying to manage the gap as best I can to the cars behind. The fact they're battling is helping me, of course. We've got lap traffic coming up ahead. And lap traffic is another, you know, driving a lap as quick as you can is a skill. It's an art. But a race is not made up of, how many laps there are, 18 in this case, 18 laps of hot lapping. It's made of 18 laps of racing. Here we can see racing, 14 and 4 battling. They're taking less than optimal lines. 4's playing defensive. So he's losing optimum race time. Both of these are, to me, just ahead. I've got traffic ahead of me, so I've got to take that into consideration. So I've got to think about where am I going to pass him? How quickly am I gaining on that lap traffic? And at what point am I going to take them? Can I pass him in a way that gives me an extra second of gap to the cars behind? In other words, can I get past to that losing time? And this, as I say, as you can see, it's a real ding-dong battle between the 4 and the 14. So I come around here, and he actually lets me through. Rejoins on the apex, and 4 and 14 will have had to slow a little bit just to see what he was doing. And this section is a section that you really don't want a lap car letting him through. And in fact, what's happened is he has let him through. 14's lost out quite noticeably, and I've gained time. And that was a perfect example. I lapped the car with a bit of help from the green car, but I lapped him at the right point in a way that didn't lose me time. The next corner, if that green car had stayed at racing speed, he'd have held up the 4 and the 14, but not done anything wrong in holding them up, because it's a tight sequence. It's a very much I mean, as you come out that right, we'll see it in a minute, you come out of it in third and you're flat out for a left-right sequence. So it's very much a single line sequence. It's not a sequence where it's easy to let something through, and someone lifting off actually can impede you more. And that's basically what happened there. The 4 and the 14 had to work through traffic in a part of the track that wasn't compatible particularly. So from about where he's now, you are flat out through here, through here, through here, and if you get the line right, you're flat through here as well, and at worst it's only a small lift. So really, this is where the green car would have been letting them past, had he not been in the position where he was, where he just didn't have any choice over the matter. But he didn't deliberately impede, is the point I'm making. But I made a decisive thing. I'm going past. I went past. He helped me a little bit, and I gained about a second on. And at this stage of the race, that's what I need. I need that second. But you can see how the 4 of us up at the front are really keeping this race tight. It's not a, I'm having to keep it tidy. Try not to make mistakes. Try to keep the race laps consistent. Keep them plugging away. Try not to lose time to the cars ahead, or more time than they need to. but 4 is really going for it now. He's been given a break by that traffic. 14's no longer putting pressure on him, so he's switched from defensive to full-on attack. He hasn't got any laps left. He knows that he's just got absolutely K in it, whilst I've just got to manage the gap. I'll probably ultimately, depends how you look at it, I either timed it perfectly or I did, it was getting a bit borderline at the end. And I think we've probably got 2 laps left of this race. We're just past 25 minutes. It's a fixed 18-minute length race, by the way, but because of the way that iRacing replays work, I don't have the lap counter up. So I'm just looking at how long I've been recording voice for as a guide for how long, judging how much of a race is left. And this is the last lap, so you can see how narrow the gap is now, and I'm basically just trying to keep it smooth, not do anything silly, and I'll be taking corners apart. I mean, I took that turn 4, I did actually cut it, but again, I ran wide because it was the safest line. It wasn't because it wasn't necessarily sort of pushing it. I got the line slightly wrong. Keep it smooth, keep it under control, and really from this point on, even though as you can see he's closed right up, and next, going into turn 1 he'd be right with me, he isn't going to get past because there's nowhere to pass. There's no braking zones. There's a lift zone there. There's a short braking zone. So, okay, there is a braking zone. It's a very short one here. And that's it. Through there. And race over. But he's got the lead 2 close together. Oops, I'll go the right way in a minute. The 2 behind very close. That's the lapped car there. But there's definitely and here's another battle. This pair's about 30 seconds behind. And I had another, these pair are a great battle as well. But, quite a long race, and to have a long race where the lead 4 cars are less than 4 seconds apart really is, that was an enjoyable race, and I hope you enjoy watching it. Different way of doing it, post-race rather than pre-race, but I hope you enjoyed it. And the results should have popped up by now, and you can see how we did. Thanks for listening, and I will speak to you soon.